Facebook ban on Donald Trump will hold social networks oversight board rule. They have an oversight board. Who picked them? Oh, the guys who run Facebook. This is like the cops are investigating themselves. Turns out they didn't commit any crimes. Hey, turns out Facebook's ban's cool. Who said? Facebook? And by the way, there he is at a Ted Nugent concert. Here we go. Anyway, at the time of Mr. Trump's posts, there was a clear immediate risk of harm, and his words of support for those involved in the riots legitimized violent actions, the Facebook Oversight Board wrote in the announcement of its decision. Given the seriousness of the violations and the ongoing risk of violence, Facebook was justified in suspending Mr. Trump's accounts. Facebook created the Oversight Board to review the hardest calls it makes about what content it does and does not. Facebook created Facebook got some other guys from Facebook to confirm what they did was right. That's with a straight face. I bet they were giggling when they wrote that, actually. What are their qualifications to be on the Oversight Board? I guess we'll never know. Are they aware we already have free speech laws? We'll never know. Facebook, following the ruling, will now determine an action that is clear and proportionate, Vice President of Global Affairs and Communications Nick Clegg said in a statement. Until then, he said, Trump's accounts will remain suspended. That guy sounds like he's more important than the president. Vice President of Global Affairs and Communications. That sounds really important.
Well, the biggest position at Facebook is just Prince of the World. That's Mark Zuckerberg's.
In a statement, Trump said Facebook, as well as Twitter and Google, had taken away his free speech. And why would you say that? Because the way people communicate now is like there was before the telephone, people used to have the Pony Express. And that was the quickest way you could communicate across distance, was the Pony Express. And then they invented the telephone. And then everybody got telephones. So then the telephone was seen as a utility, like it's something you had to have to live in the modern world, just like running water, clean and plumbing and sewage. Those are called utilities, right? Electricity, telephone, plumbing. Those are considered utilities because everybody's got to have them to live in the modern society. Well, now, in order to communicate in the modern society, you have to go on social network platforms. That's how everyone communicates. Everyone, including the president, including news organizations, have their own social network accounts.
CIA.
The CIA has a social network. Everybody. That's the town square now, and we all know it. So those should be considered a utility, just like the telephone. Meaning you can't take away Trump's telephone because he says something nefarious on it. But now they're going to take away your right to speak in public without breaking any laws. Without breaking any laws. If he's broken some laws, then there's a Justice Department, they should prosecute them. They're not doing that. You know who's prosecuting them? Facebook. In a completely opaque way. Not transparent at all. There's no adversary. Trump wasn't allowed to present his case. There's no impartial judge. There's no nothing. Just a bunch of jagoffs handpicked by a billionaire. And Anna Kasparian and the Young Turks would say, this is great. Even as they're being censored. They're all for oligarch censorship without due process. That's the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian and Cenk Uygur. They're not for democracy. They're not for due process. They're not for they're pro-censorship. And they're cheering this on. Stripping Trump of the ability to reach his 35 million Facebook. By the way, Bernie Sanders is against this. Just so you know, Bernie Sanders showed a little nutsack, and he's against this. I mean, he doesn't have to actually do anything or actually vote against it he doesn't have any. So it's easy for him to say this. So when it doesn't matter, Bernie Sanders could actually say something that's honest. And he said this was wrong. Stripping Trump of the ability to reach his 35 million Facebook followers and 24 million Instagram followers has stoked criticism that the tech company is biased against conservatives, a claim many on the right have made for years without evidence. I'm pretty sure this would be evidence. What? Without evidence? I've got tons of evidence, NPR, you fucking bullshitters. I've got tons of evidence that NPR are straight up liars. Here's some of it right here.
Right.
That the right wing has no evidence that Facebook is biased. Well, right there, that's just a straight up lie. And that shows you how establishment media works. NPR, Facebook, the Biden administration, Silicon Valley, they're all in the same cabal, right? The company's policies and lack of transparency have led to widespread confusion and contributed to the suspicion of bias, the board co-chair said at a press conference shortly after the decision. It hasn't led to widespread confusion. We're not confused about what's happening. We know what's happening. Facebook is censoring shit that the intelligence community tells it to censor. That's what's happening. We're not confused about it. There's a lack of transparency. Why? Why? Because that's what's happening. And why wouldn't they want to be transparent if it was all on the up and up? Because it's not on the up and up. When you do not have clarity, consistency, and transparency, there's no way to know, he said. And much of the reason for demanding consistency and transparency is so that this can be revealed. The panel, which is funded by Facebook through a $130 million independent trust, is currently made up of 20 experts.
Oh, boy.
We've debunked those experts on the regular here. They said we were lying. They flagged one of our news reports about the vote counting in the Iowa, and we said the DNC was nefariously sticking their fingers in it. They flagged that as fake news. Turns out that, of course, it was revealed by an investigation that was exactly what was happening. So we've debunked their fucking fact checkers. Their fact checkers are propagandists, and the NPR are propagandists. Why? Because they're funded by the Koch brothers and the Archer Daniels Midland and the military industrial complex and Walmart and fucking Bank of America. That's who funds NPR, the people they're supposed to be exposing. So 20 experts from around the world are on this panel, including specialists in law and human rights and several journalists. Who are they?
Experts.
Editor's note, Facebook is among NPR's financial supporters.
Well, it gets better, too. I mean, because, I've been reading up on this today. There was a Vox article that also this panel of experts also said that at the end of the day, it's just kind of Facebook's decision. Like, they're basically like, yeah, we're cool with this. And by the way, we don't even really, it's basically Facebook's decision. And that's the problem here. And we've been talking about this for years now, and the theme remains the same. You have the Silicon Valley plutocrats just deciding what is and isn't permissible. There's no process. And look, I've been saying the same thing, whether it's Donald Trump or Alex Jones or whoever it is. Look, if they violated free speech laws, I'm fine with them being deplatformed. Did they? I don't know, but I'm not qualified to make that call. You know who else isn't qualified to make that call? Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, some randomly appointed community of experts who even acknowledges that they're not even making that call. So that's the problem here. And just for the record, too, most of the time, the people affected by Facebook censorships are not high-profile people like Donald Trump. They're usually anti-war pages or Muslim communities or sex workers. Those are usually, the types of folks marginalized and censored by Facebook. So, it's time for real policy that meets the moment, not this weird, like non-transparent terms of services bullshit. We're in a weird moment where technology has passed up the law by miles. And if you want to see a really great statement about this entire thing, Go to fightforthefuture.org. They sum it up perfectly. They say exactly what the problem is and what it's all about. And we'll probably be saying the same shit 4 years from now because nothing ever changes. And the same weak talking points are repeated uncritically. Boom.
Facebook is among NPR's financial supporters. And now you know the rest of the story. I guess we know who won't be getting censored on Facebook. That would be NPR and their misinformation. And then when they come out and are pro-war, they will not be censored on Facebook either. And when they smear a podcaster, NPR will not be censored either. When they repeat CIA talking points, NPR will not be censored. But the people who debunk them will be. And so you don't take away someone's access to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, just like you don't take away someone's telephone, because now they are the way we communicate in the modern world. You can't go take away. The Klan has access to telephones. Everybody gets that. Everybody gets clean water. Everybody gets electricity. Everybody should be able to be on social media because that is the town square now, and we all know it. But it's the way for the oligarchs to control the narrative, which they have lost now because people like us get to go on social media and communicate with people, and they've got to shut that down. And they used Alex Jones as the boogeyman, and now they're using Trump as the boogeyman. But who really gets censored? Well, the people like us get censored. People who are anti-war get censored. Socialists get censored. Anybody who has a counter narrative to the establishment gets censored. And they have to use Donald Trump as the boogeyman to scare you to say it's okay. Here's Huffington Post covering it. Facebook's board decision on Trump's ban could have wider impacts. What do they say? They say Facebook set the rules, our judge, jury, and executioner, and control their own appeals court and their own Supreme Court. The decisions they make have an impact on our democracies, national security, and biosecurity, and cannot be left to their own theater of the absurd, said Imran Ahmed, Center for Countering Digital Hate CEO. What? Wow. Gautam Hans, a technology law and free speech expert and professor at Vanderbilt University, said he finds the Oversight Board structure to be a sideshow from the larger policy and social questions that we have about these companies. In other words, this board is a complete bullshit gesture. That's what he said.
Yeah. Well, it's a gesture to get away from the real issue. And the real issue is that, we need to have new policy that requires these entities to follow the free speech laws of the United States.
To some degree, Facebook is trying to create an accountability mechanism that I think undermines efforts to have government regulation and legislation. Bingo. If any other company decided, well, we're just going to outsource our decision-making to some quasi-independent body, that would be thought of as ridiculous. So there you go. And I'm sure the Young Turks are thrilled about this and all the other shit libs. I'm sure Chris Cuomo's happy about this. And anybody with an MSNBC contract is all for it, even as they're being suppressed. Oh, they're not. People on the corporate algorithm, the Young Turks on the corporate algorithm. MSNBC shows are not on the corporate algorithm. If you're on the Peacock network, you're not on you're on the corporate algorithm. So so there you go. I go over. I can't wait to go over to the Young Turks and watch their shit video on this. I cannot wait. This is the thing they've been cheering for. They've been cheering for fucking censorship by oligarchs forever. That's what they're all about. They love censorship at the Young Turks, and they want that. They want the Jeff Zuckerberg and they want Jack Dorsey to be able to unilaterally just censor anybody without any due process at any time, which is the equivalent in 2021 of canceling someone's telephone. That's the kind of shit show the Young Turks have turned into, which is why no one watches that show anymore. They'll drop videos that get like 5,000 views. If I did that, I would have to completely shut down my operation and reevaluate. Or I'd have to go get $24 million in corporate cash to stay afloat. But anyway, there you go. That's the... Ron, how much worse do you think this censorship's going to get before people start pushing back? What do you think has to happen?
Geez.
What do you think has to happen?
Well, what I think has to happen, and I know it's a tall order, but I think anything else is not enough. I think we need to pass a real digital Bill of Rights, and it needs to include specific policies on how social media companies have to behave and what laws have to be followed. I think some antitrust legislation would help too, because these companies are just way too powerful. Facebook, Google, you name it, they're just way too big, way too freaking powerful. And I think it needs to include net neutrality, which isn't, the same issue, but it is kind of, adjacent. And I think it also needs to include accessibility issues too, because you're talking about the telephone. We have not reached the point where the internet is treated like a utility the way phone service is. And that's where we need to go. I mean, we're at a moment now. There was a point in history where electricity was kind of something that only so many people had great access to and everyone else not so much. And then they changed that. There are actually still places in the United States that are underserved when it comes to electricity, which is hard to imagine, but is real. But it's a lot better than it was. We need to get the internet up to that point.
The Tennessee Valley Authority was right. Wasn't that I think that was the FDR brought it to rural places, all that stuff. So anyway, yeah, I mean, we see it as you either see it as a utility or you don't. And
right.
It is. Obviously, the internet is something that you can't live in the world without anymore. Yeah, everything runs by email and this and that, and everything does. And so, I mean, even to get your vaccines, you got to sign up on the internet. You got to the whole thing. Right. So everyone knows the internet is just as essential as telephones were 20, 30, 40 years ago. They're an essential. You can't live in the society without them. They're a utility. And so you shouldn't be allowed to take that away from someone without an adversarial process, meaning a judge. And I remember when I was arguing this at the Young Turks. The Young Turks are like, really? So every time they want to ban someone, they have to have a court case? Yes! Every time you want to take away someone's free speech, you have to go to court? Yes! Every time you want to put someone in jail, you have to have a court case, Jimmy? Yes! I mean, every time you want to take away someone's constitutional rights, you have to have a court case? Yes! That's how they think at the Young Turks. That's how they don't think. And that's how all the shit libs don't think. So I applaud your decision to stop watching that show and to come here and to come to this show and get better information from a pothead. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.